Okay, hello, welcome. Nice to see you all, virtually at least. My name is Sean Mahoney, and I'm at Fukushima University. I'll be looking today at the non-native assistant English teachers at the primary or elementary school level here in Japan. Now, this is a project that I and Professor Inoue, Shinichi Inoue at Ibaraki University have been working on for a few years now. And we'd like to share some of the data that has been collected so far. First of all, just to give you some background on English education in Japan, especially at the primary school, you may already know that only about 5% of homeroom teachers in grade 5 and 6 have an English teaching license, and only about 10% of them have A-Ken English level ability equal to level 2 or higher. So, of course, they need assistance. In many cases, there are almost 13,000 assistants in Japan, ranging from volunteers through to typical native English ALTs and non-native ALTs, plus the new category of Eigo Kyoiku Suishin Leader, who are actually permanent primary school teachers, Japanese citizens. And they've also been trained by the Ministry of Education exactly in how to teach English at this level. As you probably know, from April 2020, just this year, English became a kyoka, or an officially evaluated core subject, and it has some very highly recommended textbooks as well for grades 5 and 6. For grades 3 and 4, the children take mandatory classes, just called language activities, and they're not evaluated. Okay. The next course of study now is continually expanding its range of people besides typical ALTs who can help with these classes, revisions from the last 10 years. It now includes people who have extensive overseas, they've visited overseas quite often, or they have a wide variety of knowledge on world affairs, or they have a different culture, happen to have a different culture themselves. Okay, and it seems that this list of contributors or people who can possibly contribute continues to grow. Now, please remember that the goals of the program at primary schools is it's not really to teach English skills. That's often misunderstood. Here's what it says in 2008 and also in 2018. It's to foster this willingness to communicate and positive attitude, and through, to deepen some experiential understanding of languages, including Japanese, and cultures, and, provide foundations for the future as the students become familiar with sounds, some basic phrases. Okay, it's not really to teach English skills. The project background, of course, for this one, we did studies 7 years ago. There was a large-scale survey of homeroom teachers, grades 5 and 6 teachers, over 1,800 people, and also an ALT survey at the time. These were almost exclusively native English speakers on the JET program and other programs. That motivated me to get so-called non-native participants helping, because we know that they're out there, but their voices hadn't been heard until now. So I did a pilot study involving ALTs from mainly Japan, but ended up being 8 other countries as well. And then I did 2 years of interviews with non-native speaking assistants also. Now, one of our research questions is, to define who is helping, and also to look at how often they're doing so. And the best guess in terms of how often they're helping is Mombosho's own study in 2017. They had a large-scale survey. And this is just a percentage of classes, not percentage of schools, or a number of students. About 11% of the classes, or in my own study in 2014, 11.8% of the classes were being taught with a non-native, so-called non-native English-speaking ALT, both Japanese citizens and non-Japanese citizens. Okay, so this thin slice of the pie is the target group for this study. Now, the survey itself, as I said, the target is, of assistants who are not from the UK or US or Canada, the traditional so-called inner circle countries, but everyone else who's contributing. And the questions are based on 2013 surveys, as much as possible, of the grades 5 and 6 homeroom teacher and ALT surveys we've already done. And we posted by mail a bilingual introduction, along with a link to the online survey and a QR code as well, to 4,000 schools, and that was last year. So, but please remember, even if all of them responded, 11% of 4,000, we'd only get 400, maybe 440 responses. We were quite happy to get, here we go, next slide, 214 responses were done in Japanese, only 17 in English. So again, this year I went and phoned some agencies whom I know employ ALTs from Brazil or Peru and other countries, and got 10 more. So the overwhelming number of them were from Japan. Second largest category were from the Philippines, but also from Singapore. We had some Indian, Ghanaians, German, British people, maybe people who had immigrated to the UK, Nepal, Netherlands, and several other countries. Okay, they teach, the average number of schools they teach at were, for the two groups, 2.2 in the case of the Japanese, and the average number of schools were 2 schools for the people who responded in English. Now, the key issues that we're looking at here, and that I'll cover in this presentation, are the meetings with the main team teaching partner at their main schools. And this is a perennial problem in studies that have been done for over 20 years in junior and senior high, is that just, they often can't meet before class. Also, we're looking at who plans these classes, who generally is leading them, what are the success stories they have, what is their definition of success, and what are some of the stumbling blocks or unsuccessful classes that they've been experiencing. So I'll go over some of those today, and also comparing where possible the results with data from the earlier studies in 2013. Okay, as to the pre-class meetings, from the data from the Japanese language survey, over 70% were meeting either usually or always with their main team teaching partners. The responses given in English were a little bit less. They met at about 61% of their classes were pre-planned, or they had some kind of meeting. And compare that with the results in 2013, not a big difference. It was about 67% of homeroom teachers said that they met, either usually or always. But in the English survey responses, 61% of the ALTs generally met. And it's a bit lower. I don't know, it could be a matter of homeroom teacher avoidance. It could be that it's in their contract, they're not allowed to meet beforehand. We're not quite sure. I'll have to delve into the long answer data a little bit more to answer this. Now, who chiefly is planning these classes? From the Japanese surveys, it looks like over half, about 60% of the outside assistants were making the plans themselves. The people who responded in English generally were planning them in conjunction with the Japanese homeroom teachers, not leading the planning on their own. Compare this with the data from 2013. The homeroom teachers said that they were leading at about 42%, or 40%, 42%, sorry. 40%. Yeah, homeroom teachers I would be 40% there, yes. But that contrasted with the 2013 ALTs, who said that the homeroom teacher was only planning about 11% of these classes. So I'm not sure what has happened here, whether they're planning less these days, if you look at the new data, or whether they simply over-reported themselves as planning the classes in 2013. I'm not quite sure on that, but it doesn't look like there's evidence that they're planning significantly more than they used to be. It looks like actually, especially the Japanese respondents, were planning a lot more these days. Okay, who chiefly leads these classes? The Japanese language respondents said in most of the cases that they were leading. The English respondents, it was about half of the time they found themselves leading the class. Now again, there's no clear evidence from the non-native speaking group here that homeroom teachers are stepping up to lead more these days during these classes that are team taught. They may even be leading less often, despite being asked to do more. Again, either that or they over-reported themselves leading and cooperating in 2013. Okay, as to successful classes, this is based on the Japanese data, text analytics for surveys. The English data is still being inputted. So the most popular categories and mentionings here were, of course, the children, and they were either speaking or making skits or perhaps talking about summer memories, exhibiting a willingness to communicate or wanting to speak, and being interested in speaking, it seems, were the main keywords from how these target groups saw, the Japanese target group at least, saw successful classes. Here's an example that picks up the main points. Again, one answer can cover a variety of these categories. I'll let you read this example here. Okay, so again, it looks like, yeah, this comment at least, it picks up on a lot of the main answers that were given. The children using English inside the class, even outside, but it had to be on a voluntary basis. It couldn't be too forced, right? And it was even more of a delight when the children were seen to be cooperating and helping each other in the learning process. Now, this is from a male Japanese in the Aichi prefecture in his 20s, and he teaches with a homeroom teacher and a native speaking ALT in a team of 3 partners. This was actually about 15% of the respondents said that they were in 3-person team teaching situations, at least some of the time. More examples of success, of course, involve the homeroom teacher and with them achieving or actually doing something in the class. So I'll just read this. This one assistant had a motto of, speaking English is fun, and the homeroom teacher helped using the phrases in other classes, not only in English class, but in the other classes as well. And so much so that this motivation spilled over into the rest of the school, and the children were asking their principal questions in English, and it just continued on. This spark that had started in the classroom spilled over into the rest of the class, and that was seen as a real sign of success. Some stumbling blocks, again, this is from the Japanese data, of course had to do most with teaching, including the children not understanding instructions that were given in English, a lot of over-drilling or over-explanation, especially of grammatical principles, led to a lot of unsuccessful classes. The activities themselves included things like, some recommended ideas that they had studied at maybe Kenshu or some type of training, and they found they weren't appropriate for their classes, or that sometimes they had designed themselves, but the level was too high, ultimately, okay? So those are some of the stumbling blocks. Here's a couple more. Of course, discipline, this is an age-old issue. Means mainly class management, and even the children just being noisy, not taking the English classes seriously. The children themselves, there's a wide variety of children out there within the classes and amongst the classes. There are very big differences, it seems, in terms of performance and motivation, okay? So those are other stumbling blocks that have been found so far. Here's 3 examples. These are from the English data. I'll let you read them. Okay, so yeah, the overdependence on the ALT or the assistants, and this was a Filipina woman who she even gives greetings, a cheat sheet. She has advanced Japanese skills actually, and it's still there. She's maybe working too hard, or she sees herself as working too hard. Last minute preparation often has to do with not meeting in the first place, and discipline. Okay, so those 3 comments exemplify those stumbling blocks. As for a recap of the findings now, the questions again, do respondents meet with their partners, their main partners at their main schools before class? Yes, these days, 60 to 70% of the time. And the Japanese respondents seem to be meeting a bit more often. And still, though, there's this small group of 8 to 13% who never meet or seldom meet with their main team teachers, even at their main schools. As to who plans these classes, the survey respondents themselves seem to plan most of them, especially in the Japanese case. And the English respondents more often plan together, most often planned together with the ALTs. And in both groups, fewer than 20% said that the homeroom teacher was planning these classes alone. Okay. Also, as regard to leading the classes, generally the respondents are leading a lot of these classes, with the HRT leading in around 20% of the cases. Success, again, is defined as, as actually seeing the children spontaneously using English inside and outside these class activities. And the difficulties which were seen in senior and junior high school remain, plus there is now a greater chance of having the assistants do everything in these classes, especially the assistants who can speak Japanese well. Okay, so even more than at the junior and senior high. A few other findings and some questions here, maybe for future research. Homeroom teacher dependency on help continues. And some of the helpers I interviewed were, who were successful in getting the homeroom teachers, involved more, went to the boards of education. And the Board of Education cooperation and principal's assistance seems essential. Remember, not all of these people in the target group are comfortable in the first place asking homeroom teachers to do more. Some of them are very aware of their status as an assistant, especially those aware of Japanese customs, and they find it very difficult to approach them. Not all of this group is even comfortable asking the homeroom teachers to do more, and some of them don't want to. They don't want the homeroom teachers doing any more than they're doing in some cases. Interesting to note that more males were involved in the non-Japanese group. It was 50-50, male and female, almost 50-50. In the Japanese group, it was almost 80% women. Okay, Now, there are some references there. I've done a few papers, one in Japanese. And if you'd like to contact me, we're still looking for recruits, especially non-Japanese assistants who don't happen to speak English as a native language. But there's my email address, and I can give you the survey link and QR codes. Please get in touch. Okay, thank you very much. Bye now.